Hello, Wotive. Happy maintenance. Tomorrow, today, really, in a couple of hours, two units are going live that I am super happy about the 140s for. I think these are as close as this game is going to come to universally good units that I think everyone should have. Are they the best units in the game? Absolutely not. That's not why they're good. That's why I think that some people might overlook them. Some very short-sighted people. Because both of these, like if you'll talk to people who played the game longer, these are two big units. Two units that are kind of staples that I think once people build out their accounts a bit, they really start to focus on. But there's a question that a lot of players come to me with because this is a game about investments of time and resources, and building a unit, really building them out, especially into the 140 zone, is a big investment. And people are skittish. People have always been kind of skittish about building the lower rarity units, building anything under UR, and more as we move forward, like building anything under 100 cost. So people often really want advice and almost want their hand held on who they should be building for limited. So I have two really unambiguously good answers. And the first isn't the best on paper, and he does have the most competition, I think I would say. The other character we're going to talk about is the queen of her niche, and even more so the queen of her niche now. But there are some really cool things that Zazan does differently than other units that help him out really well strategically, and I think his upgrade plays into that well. Now, if you're expecting this guy to get a lot of power, he's not powerful, like at least on paper. There are things that he does really well, we'll get into that, and it's something you learn through experience, really. Like, why this unit is good is not going to be apparent. I'm really going to have to get into explaining it, especially for you new people. I'm sorry for everybody who already knows how Zazan works. But first thing you're going to notice is 4 move. Holy crap, that's a lot of base move. Only 1 jump? That's okay. That's kind of normal. And then you come down here and you see his master ability. He also gets 1 more move and 2 more jump. This is 5 move, 3 jump, putting him up there with ninjas and dragoons and the best of them. This guy can navigate a map like nobody's business. Hills doesn't matter. He will leap them in a single bound. He will leap 2 of them in a single bound. He will throw himself across the field, and this is all before you consider, I don't know that you would want to, although Saiga Gauntlet, it now has an incredibly good synergy with him. 6 move, 4 jump, extra hate down, holy crap. 20 human killer, believe me, that's going to come up a lot more in this guy's kit. He is a DPS. He doesn't have great stats for being a DPS, so it's going to come down to modifiers like this to really get him in to do damage. But even then, like, I don't think that building him for a purely DPS role is quite the right way to go. He's more your secondary DPS, maybe even kind of a brawler. Honestly, there are kind of ways that he leans into this a bit, and I think that in 140 he will be more brawlery than you would expect. And he is already more brawlerly than you would expect, but again, as a normal unit, he's probably not someone you want to be taking a lot of hits. So you want a good distraction for him, and something that really helps is anyone can be a better distraction for him now because he has decreased chance of being targeted 4 at the beginning of the fight. Now what usually happens is Zazan is really slow, like a lot of the lower rarity units in this game. He is just incredibly slow, and unlike some of the other units, one of which we'll see later, he does not get in his master ability some increase to his agility. A lot of them have gotten a lot of agility. It's really even them out. He didn't get it. It's not a problem though, because this keeps him behind his team for the most part, but he kind of jumps up in a weird sort of way. He overtakes them briefly. So because of that, just insane ability to navigate the map, right? So he'll kind of let other units get out in front. They'll start to pick up hate. They'll maybe do other things, kind of engage with the enemies. And then all of a sudden he goes from being out of their range to attack to maybe potentially right up in their face just because of how far he can move. And some of the skills that have, like Killer Cross has decent range on it, so he can hit from a little bit of a distance. 30% HP up is a lot more meaningful than you would think, especially for a unit that is getting a 140. I don't know that he's going to have a ton of HP even with that, especially because of his low base stats, but he's had impressively more HP than I would imagine, especially if you have buffs or cards that benefit that. And I think the upgrade is to Killer Cross. So, this guy has some of the wildest buffs in the game. Like, he has buffs that just... they would not give any other unit. He has debuffs that they would not give any other unit. And I think that he is otherwise, in a lot of ways, so bad that he can get away with having these and still be awesome. He's Jumbo Shrimp, man. This guy is an oxymoron. He's not strong, but he has a buff that gives 40% attack up, human killer 20 up in a cross-shape AoE, so this guy can turn on your team. And like, yes, obviously, physical team especially, but human killer affects mages as well. That is going to boost everybody's damage. This is a universal, basically, damage up move. There's only about 3, 4, 5... maybe 5 units in the game right now that this would not apply to. So this is a damn near universal 20 mod increase, and that's pretty awesome. I just don't think that there are other characters that really get this. So great buff to help your team out as they're getting started. And then once he's getting into range, he's hopefully going to be throwing this Killer Cross. Not the best range, but again, he's like a missile, like 5 move. Okay, so he could start over here, run all the way to here, and then attack someone all the way over here, right? That is 9 spaces. Move and range combined, 9 spaces of range. I know that's kind of not the way that you think about it for most people. Most people don't have 5 move, though. So, you know, he stays out of the way until he gets up in someone's face. You know what I mean? And that keeps him safe from damage, and often means that he's coming in closer to the end of a fight after your guys have already done their thing. He's finishing people off. He gets KOs a lot more often than you would expect. And I was running this guy or Slime on every team that I had. I was running Slime on most of my teams, honestly. Wait, actually, sorry. I was running a Little Leela on my dark teams. I was running Slime on 3 out of 6 teams. I was running Zazan at 1. That was my defense team. It was 2 Zazans and a Resnick the Hoppy. Because, especially in limited, especially in 210 cost, there is only one good team. There's only one team that's viable, that's well set up to beat that, and I think that would be Joom and Flaggy Glassy, and that team has the problem of not being able to support a 3rd unit on. There's no 10 cost unit, and it was 210 cost. So there's no real reliable way to both be accurate enough to hit that team and get the elemental bonus. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't like other elemental accuracy teams that could just wreck my face, but if people are trying to instinctively go for wind, I built to beat my own wind team, and I didn't do a great job of that, but I think in limited, it really limits the options that wind teams have available. And I was seeing, like, what would regularly happen is they would eat a lightning team like it was nothing, not even lose a unit. Even Zazan stayed alive somehow. Water Zazan. Of course, Earth Zazan stayed alive. And then they would start eating wind teams. And like, at that point, I would love to be a fly on the wall of whoever was fighting them and just losing their wind teams to 2 Zazans and a Resnick the Hoppy. Because that must have been a sad day in whatever household that happened in. Subjobs kind of suck. In PV... Wait, does he have it? He does have it. In PvE, though, I think that there is also an argument for this being a really strong character. One, because he has Thief as a sub-job, so he can run Steal Time, which is crucially important whenever it works, but also because this is a damn near universal debuff. And this is going to be great in PvP. This is his upgrade. Actually, right here is the human, decreasing human resistance in an AoE pattern, which is just staggeringly good. Again, it is a damn near universal debuff that no one else has, so it's going to stack with any other unit in the game's debuffs at this time. Doesn't matter who you have. he can still pile on and make them weaker. I think that's pretty cool. Like, sure, other units are going to get this in the future, other units that actually might be able to use it to incredibly scary effect. I'm not as scared of it being on Zazan, but it's not just on him, you know? He's applying this to the enemy, and then other characters are going to be taking advantage of it. So who is this other stellar, universal, limited character that I think that everyone should be building in the next week? It's Phoebe. Now, I want to explain why for Phoebe, and why Phoebe isn't just for light players. As a light player, I developed a love of Phoebe real early on in this game. Very, very early on. And it was because I came to a realization super early on in this game about time mages, in that their best abilities really don't require stats. So if you're really going for like super efficient, super cost efficiency, then why not use your lowest cost unit, be the unit that has the most skills that don't care about their shitty stats? Because that's really what you're paying that cost for. Better stats, better abilities, less niche. That's generally the things you get for better costs. And I guess she is kind of niche, but it's such a great niche that's kind of universal. So let's talk about her. Again, she's one of these units that kind of gets the ability to make up for having poor agility as a base stat by having more agility on her master ability. She also gets an increase to her move, which gets her to 4 move, which is really good. We'll talk about why later, but kind of for similar reasons to Zazan. But one thing I want you to notice is that Master Ability 2 and Dream Ability both give her 20 more AoE resistance. So, since she is such a supportive unit, she's typically going to be in the back, especially because her upgraded skill is Quicken. So let's talk about why Phoebe is amazing. So 4 move makes her really flexible to be able to get to where she's needed. That's great. But really the thing, like the one thing that you really want to care about, just forget like all of this except for this one move, Quicken, right? Because no matter what her stats are, 200% chance to Quicken for 1 turn is 200% chance to Quicken for 1 turn. Right? Like, that means what it means. That doesn't change based on her stats. It doesn't change based on how amazing of a mage she is or how terrible of a mage she is. She doesn't even have to be a mage. You could give a non-mage unit Quicken and it would work just as well. So, the EX upgrade increased the range of that, so now she has the longest range Quicken. But wait, there's more! 140 upgrade also gives it a 5th cast. Now, this is a thing that I want to say is great by itself. If it had been the only thing, I would have hoped for 6 casts, but I think 5 threads the needle incredibly well to give it another ability and kind of upgrade, and I think that it's worth it, because, and the reason I say this is because with 4 casts, with the kind of Quicken playstyle, she'll often just go to Quicken early and often. And that'll mean that she'll probably get off 3 Quickens in her first match. So in multi-match formats like Guild Battle, she's going to play very differently into match 2, into match 3 especially. And, you know, if you have her on your defense team, this is a big problem because that's one of 2 things that she does. Most characters can do a lot of things. Really, if you want to optimize this girl, she's doing 2 things: quickening and healing. Okay, so there is another upgrade on this, and it's that it restores her CT by 200 when she casts this. And this is great. So, in addition to that 4 move, which is helpful for this strategy specifically, because one thing you gotta imagine is she's giving people extra turns, they're advancing towards the enemy with those turns, they're getting further and further away from her. So it's good that she has a little help on catching up with them, and it's also good that she is also boosting her turn speed up as well, which means that she's going to keep pace with her team a lot better, and she's also going to be able to spam these quickens, because there is a fine line between a quicken team kind of accelerating you but maybe overextending you and doing some things wrong and really being a little bit of a waste, and a quicken team being utterly dominant and unstoppable. And I really think that this is a big step towards the utterly dominant and unstoppable side of things. So the other thing that she's going to do, we're going to go all the way down to White Mage, just ignoring everything else. Believe me, ignore everything else. Just do it. Just do it. And the reason I say that is because you might be thinking, oh, Guard Haste. Maybe Guard Haste is cool. It's not. It's not. Let me just, this is just a rule of thumb, but usually single target buffs that really do one thing are terrible, and adding 15 defense to it, 15 conditional defense, although maybe the same dispel deals with both of these, so it's irrelevant, that's conditional. I just don't think it improves it enough, especially when you want her to be quickening, and if she's got guard haste, I think she uses that first most of the time, and that just means she doesn't quicken. So this is her thing. This is her niche. Okay? This is what you want her doing. Yeah, don't want her guard hasting. And the reason that this doesn't step on those toes is that she's, I mean, like, look, the things I would turn off is basically everything in here too, except for full life, because, you know, 100% HP is 100% HP. Again, doesn't care about her stats, doesn't care she's an SR unit. This ability does what it does. The other thing that I think I would leave on for her, Curata. Good high range spot healing, good modifier. I mean, this is going to be dependent on her magic. This is why I don't tell you to use a bunch of other stuff, especially because Cura doesn't impress me. She doesn't have Curata. I'm sorry, she doesn't have Curaga. So this is probably the most impactful heal that she has. So really just run these two moves, turn everything else off but quicken. Maybe also leave her with Meteor? Yeah, let her slap. Occasionally she will slap the shit out of somebody with that. And again, look, you gotta be thinking, like, here she is, she's quickening people, so people are out here. If somebody is here, they're already in the splash zone. This is a great place for her to be taking somebody out. This is a really good range for her one and only attacking skill that will keep her quickening, and then maybe, bam, take somebody out. With non-elemental damage, no less, and a pretty high mod. So even if she's not the most amazing damage dealer, she's still gonna slap pretty well with this, I guess. And just because of that, because of the way that works, it's probably not going to overlap super hard with her other abilities. It's, you know, I wouldn't give her too many things to do, but quicken, meteor, full life, and Curata. Maybe run like Mashari's TMR just to get another really great heal on her. It's also short range, so she's not going to be using that instead of quicken, especially. And sometimes you have to turn it off. Sometimes it's good, but throwing the Black Rose of the Battlefield vision card on her for Shadow Flare can be fun. There are sometimes in PvE I run Thrice the Cursor, I don't know, from the Halloween job-based vision card on her for chaining purposes, but it's not really good chaining move necessarily. The single target resistance sounds cool, but really those are the three things that you want to do, and that's why I think that her niche is pretty universal, because like she doesn't care that she's not getting the HP up, because ideally she's nowhere near the front lines, and she has AoE resistance. She doesn't care that she's not getting the same element attack power up, because she's not an attacker, and also she doesn't have elemental attacks to begin with if you're running her right. She's a non-elemental attacker anyway, so that like, even on a light team, that's irrelevant for her, is what I'm trying to stress here. So she is a really universal unit. Ignore the light, that's irrelevant. She is a pretty universal unit. And I mean, really, that's the thing about both of these units, is that they just plug in. Like, you want to run a limited team in 220, that's your two best 100 cost units, and somebody else to hold vision cards, well, you got Zazan or Slime. Zazan is the only 140 unit for the foreseeable future, and for the non-foreseeable future, like really, best case scenario, maybe we get Dragon Quest rerun in a year and a half, maybe two. So he's going to be dominating that slot of like the only in level 140 for a while, and I think that makes him a good investment. Also, again, who are you spending in level rarity stuff on anyways? And then Phoebe, like, just so many teams. Do you have a time mage on your team? You could replace her with Phoebe for limited. Do you run Lemure on your dark team? Do you run Minwoo on your fire team? Do you run... Maybe Aerith is a bad example on your... Do you run... Okay, Yuna's probably also a bad example. But, like, she just subs in really well for Valis, Yuna, whoever. Just sub her in for your support. She does a lot of those things, and in some ways, she might even do it better than the unit you're using, if her name is Lemure or something. So, definitely, both amazing units to grab. These are going to benefit you so much in limited content. It's really going to be quite astounding to you, I think, really. Like, it's just such a good opportunity for both of them. And I also think that with these lower rarity units, the ones that you can really spam the reincarnations on because the resources to do so are pretty easy to get and used in smaller quantities, I really think that these units are going to shine the very most at the beginning, because I think that there's definitely a bit of equalization happening. Something that I noticed with Little Leela is that overall, I think that the Dream enhancement system is going to bring lower rarity units a little bit more into parity with UR units. Still, not going to bring them there, and they shouldn't be. That's the way the cost system works. That's the way we understand the game. They shouldn't be as good as UR units. They should at least be more niche, even if they are better in some respects. Like they have a better quicken, for example, in Phoebe's case. But at the same time, I think that something that is going to push that dynamic way more in their direction early on is that, sure, I can't think of a good comparison for these units right now. Marguerite has a 140, maybe? Let's assume Marguerite has a 140. Okay? So maybe you've pushed some resources at Marguerite's 140. Assuming she has one already. Okay, whatever. I can't think of another time mage to use as an example. I mean, like, okay, let's just go wild and pretend that we live in a world with a 140 Lemure. Right? Your 140 Lemure is going to be pretty good, and you would argue that on paper your 140 Lemure is better than my Phoebe. But your 140 Lemure, because you're really having to save those UR scrolls, if you did 140 Lemure, you probably haven't invested super hard into her with those UR scrolls, because, you know, if you are 140 Lemure, you probably already have someone like Sephiroth 140'd, and if you do, that's probably the boy that's eating up all them UR scrolls. You probably have a basic 140 Lemure and a Sephiroth with a belly full of scrolls. But guess what? You have a lot of gold scrolls that you haven't used yet, although arguably if you built Sephiroth, you may have also built Little Leela. But we've already talked about that, right? I think that Phoebe has a better chance of being better than Lemure in a meta where she's had 40 reincarnations, and because of the scarcity of UR resources, Lemure has only had maybe 1 or 2. I think that is going to make that gap almost functionally invisible. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how much it's going to equalize that, but it's going to allow you to run a team that functionally has a 140, basic 140 Lemure on it in limited, and that's going to be really powerful. So people who invest in Phoebe and Zazan really early on, I think that they're going to see huge rewards on super minimal investments, and that these, you know, that because they are in such a strong and well-defined niche, both of them, within limited content, that you're not going to regret those investments, even if they do kind of fall a little bit, because they're still going to be the best way to do certain things, and that's always going to be good, even if it's not as amazing as it is maybe for the next month or 2 or 3 or 4. I don't know. It's hard to call like how this cycle is playing out, because it feels so much slower. Like the pacing of it, in terms of being able to maximize a character, feels so much more relaxed than other systems have felt like to me. So anyways, this is like my third take. I've been talking about this for over an hour now due to technical difficulties of various kinds related to my mic, but I finally finished those, and I finally finished this video, and now you know way too much about why I love these two characters and why I think that they are universal great choices, even for like, you know, free to play people with not a lot of resources, new players. I don't care who you are, but look, I will say, if you have either of these characters at 120 and you don't have a real good excuse for not building them to 140 tomorrow, call out sick of work, I don't give a shit. I will come to your house and I will kick you in the shins. Not hard, but repeatedly. You'll have bruises. It will be very annoying. So don't do it. Don't make that mistake. I don't want your shins to hurt. Also, I don't want to have to kick you. Just build